tuning in to the Queen's Court podcast, a space curated for women by women. Here we celebrate empowerment, faith, sisterhood, and growth. So pull up a seat, settle in, and let's step into the rain room together.
Welcome back to the Queen's Court, a space curated for women by women where faith, sisterhood, and real conversations meet. I'm your host, Neicey Ford, and if this is your first time joining us, welcome to the court. Pull up a chair, grab your tea, your wine, whatever it is you need, and just vibe out with your girl for about 10, 15 minutes. I'm not going to keep you long, but as the pastor say, I am going to keep you long enough. So I want to share something that I did with you guys. A couple weekends ago, I did something that might sound very small to some people, but for me, it was a really big deal. I took swimming lessons. I know. Now, let me explain something, though. I'm not afraid of the water. I've always liked the water. You know, I can get in, I can put my feet in, I could submerge my whole body in. But what I had never done was learn how to swim. Now, there's a story, of course, and I'm ready to tell it to you. When I was 12, I almost drowned in one of the apartment complex swimming pools. My aunt had moved to College Park, Georgia, and my brother and we went to stay with her and my cousins for the summer. Now, there was, it's always something. There was a teenage boy who was apparently the catch of the neighborhood. And, you know, he was light skinned, he had real good hair, pretty eyes, he even had the dog chain around his neck. Had muscles, and at 13, I didn't even know that was possible, but it was. So he had muscles, and anywho, this was the boy that I liked. Then there was another boy. He was dark skinned, low fade, not as muscular as Dog Chain. Um, he was okay, and he was he was watching me. I'm so thankful that he was because and let's go back because he liked me, but of course, again, I liked Dog Chain, but he was watching me, and Dog Chain was somewhere being, the center of attention. But this young man was watching me, and I'm glad that he was, because if you know anything about the water, and when you're in it, if you're just standing still, the water will push you further, like it'll push you down. So I was standing in the shallow end. I don't know what happened, but seconds later, it seems like here I am in the deep end of the pool, and all I remember was my head going underwater. I know that I panicked because I remember it in my mind, but what I did, whether I was flopping around frantically, I'm not really sure what I was doing, but I do know and remember in my mind that I panicked. But I also remember this hand pulling me up, and it was the dark skinned young man. And I will forever be grateful to this young man. Although the summer ended, we returned home. I never got back in the pool, but we did have fun. They had teenage parties and all kinds of other stuff that we was able to attend and enjoy, but I never got back in the pool. So going back to that, the memory of College Park and the experience was forever embedded into my mental. And after that, I just never learned how to swim. So fast forward to the younger Neicey, I'm probably about 22, 23, I believe. The Y was having free lessons, free swim lessons. And I remember signing up for the class and going. I was in the water with several other people, and the ages ranged. I wasn't the youngest one, but I wasn't the oldest one either. And I remember seeing my boyfriend's cousin and his cousin's best friend walk past the glass, and they were coming in to shoot ball. So I panicked, and out of sheer embarrassment, I quit and I never went back. Now, fast forward again, here I am 50, and I decided to learn how to swim after being told by the instructor, who is a friend of mine, that I should have taken the class, many years ago when she asked. And this was probably back mid to late 30s. But again, I just never did. And I did all kinds of other things, but swimming, that was something that just remained unfinished. And it's interesting how life works like that, because sometimes the things that we leave unfinished aren't because we're incapable. It's because somewhere along the way, something happened that made us tighten up. And just remember that I'm saying that, the tighten up part. So again, a few weeks ago, I decided it was time. I signed up for the lessons and went. Now, the class itself was absolutely amazing. It was a 4-day class. The instructor was patient, they were encouraging. Sometimes they were very direct, but there was one moment during the lesson that I knew that was going to challenge me. We are in the last day, and the instructor said, "Now you have to jump into the deep end." Now, mind you, the deep end is exactly where the story began for me at the age of 12. So here I am standing on the edge of this pool, and I realized something. I realized that I wasn't afraid of the water. I was afraid of the memory. And sometimes in life, that's exactly what we're dealing with. We say that we're afraid of something, whether it's a new relationship, a new job, relocating to a new city, a new season in our life, whatever it is, but we're really reacting to something that happened before, a moment where, I don't know, things didn't go well or we felt out of control, and we thought that we weren't going to make it. And that was something else that I learned as well about control, but we'll talk about that in a second too. So here I am standing on the edge of the deep end, and the instructor says, jump. Here's the other thing. One of the other instructors noticed about me when I was actually in the water. She said, "You're very tight." And I laughed because I thought, what do you mean tight? But she was right. Like my shoulders were tight and my body was stiff because in my mind I wasn't in control. Now, she asked me, she said, "Neicey, what do you do for work?" And I told her, I was in leadership, and she just smiled and shook her head. She said, "Yeah." She said something that stuck in my head after, like from that moment. She said that people who are in leadership positions often struggle with relaxing. And she was absolutely right, because there are plenty of days when I come home from work and I have to decompress. So I will draw myself a really, really hot bath. I have Dr. Teal's Epsom salt and bubbles in there, a candle going, a glass of wine beside, on my little caddy, all in an attempt to relax after a hard day, because we're used to being in control. We're used to thinking, 3 and 4 steps ahead. We're used to managing situations, managing people, managing outcomes, but swimming doesn't work like that. Swimming requires you to relax. It requires you to trust the water. And I remember when we first started, she said they were going to be my mind. And I also remember her telling the instructor that was assigned to me for that day, I remember her telling him that I was a perfectionist, which I didn't think I was, but I think maybe I am now. Anyways, she told him that I was a perfectionist, and he instructed me to do something. And in my mind, I had to rationalize he was like, "Nope, nuh-uh, no rationalizing." He was like, just do it. And that was hard for me because again, now I'm not in control. And sometimes our biggest struggle, isn't ability, it's learning how to release. And baby, that right there, when they said, about me, leadership being in control, that really spoke to me because it wasn't just about learning how to swim, but as a woman who leads and who carries responsibility and who's always used to being on because I can never shut off. That was the biggest struggle. So I stood there still at the edge of this pool, y'all. I ain't jumped in yet. So I'm having this conversation with myself and going back to back. I'm like, girl, listen, what you gonna do? Either you gonna sink or swim. So there were, so I took a couple deep breaths. Like I said, I paced back and forth for about, a little minute. It was a little minute. And I remember another instructor, and God love her for this. She offered to jump in with me, but I declined because I didn't need someone to hold my hand. This wasn't anything that someone else could do or could fix for me. It was a mental thing. And I was the only one that was going to be able to resolve it because I had to ultimately get over the block, the mental block that had been in my mind since, since 12, so 38 years now. So, like I said, after about a couple of minutes, I took a deep breath and I just jumped. I hit the water, did exactly what they had instructed me to do prior to jumping in, and then I swam all the way across the pool. So that let me, and let me be honest, it wasn't the most graceful swim you've ever seen, but I did it, and when I got to the other side, I realized something else, that the deep end didn't take me out. The thing that almost took me out when I was 12 didn't get the final word for me. And at that moment, it reminded me that sometimes the breakthroughs we need, they come when we decide to go back and face the places where we felt powerless. Now, not to relive the fear, but to rewrite the ending. And y'all know that I love writing a good story. So with that, it's got to have a powerful ending. So that right there was profound for me. And I remember the instructor saying, you should go home and celebrate, because you not only swam, you broke through a barrier today, one that you have been holding on to for years. And he was absolutely right. Now, one day or one class, one jump in the deep end is not going to eliminate or resolve a 38-year mental block. It's going to take some time. So I'm still going to keep practicing. I want to get more comfortable. I want to be more graceful in the water. But the first step, just jumping in and making it across, that was great breakthrough for me. And it made me realize that so many of us are standing on the edge of something. And like I said, whether it's a new opportunity, a relocation, a new relationship, but we're tight or we're tense. Our minds are racing and telling us things that we've probably said to ourselves a million and million times over, about things that have happened in the past. And sometimes what we need to do is not overthink the moment. Sometimes we just need to take a deep breath and jump. Now, in the next episode, I'm hoping that I can get the instructor to come on to the Queen's Court, because what she shared about the connection between the mind, the body, and the ability to relax in the water was powerful. Another thing that I learned about myself is that I naturally float, but if I can't relax, the water is going to take me out. So I have to figure out a way in my mind to release everything and just relax so that I can enjoy the water as much as everybody else does. So, we're going to talk about fear, control, leadership, and what it really means to learn how to float instead of fight. Because sometimes the water isn't trying to take us under, it's trying to teach us how to move. So until next time, remember this: what almost took you out doesn't get the final say. You survived and you grew from it. Now you get to decide how the story ends. This has been the Queen's Court. I'm your host, Neicey Ford. And until next time, chin up or the crown slips.
Thank you for joining us in the Queen's Court today. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and download so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep reigning with purpose and walking in power.